Death is like the winter chill. No door can keep it from us. And summer yet may bloom again, though ice be all upon us.
My child, there is so much to tell you, that I have run out of time. The sacrifice I made was not enough. The dark gods still feed on our transgressions. Corruption. Obsession. Deceit. Rage. You must face these demons.
Greetings friends and welcome to the Week in War. I'm Lorcan and oh baby, the hype is real and has been masterfully crafted by Creative Assembly this past week. Bravo guys. I hope you excuse me putting the trailer at the start here again in full. It's just one of the best I've seen and I don't get bored of watching it. Also apologies that this video isn't as highly edited as some of my other content. Anyway, I really didn't expect the rapid fire teasers and the trailer for Warhammer 3 to all come out in 1 week. But as this is the spot for me to go sifting through all the news leftovers like a half-eaten kebab from the night before, it's time for this lore nerd to say his piece. I'm sure I'm not the only one who spent far too long looking at actual star constellations for any hints in the first teaser. But as it turned out, the fantasy constellations revealed quickly confirmed the obvious, that the 4 Chaos Gods and Kislev were starting factions. Being in the comments section of those creators with early access and flushed with my speculation successes in those conversations, I'm going to do my own breakdown of the trailer and the information from Steam, the FAQ and other sources to make some guesses on the faction's units, and most importantly, I'm going to give you my predictions for the 9 legendary lords and the pre-order bonus race. And I'd love your predictions down there in the comments too. I'm thinking a prize might be in order for whoever comments and gets the most things right. So buckle up buckaroos, cause it's speculation time, and I've got a few things in here I don't think anybody else has said yet. As with the Darktide trailer, I'll pause at key points and expand a wee bit on the lore as we go through, without spending too long on each bit. I'll maybe expand on some of it in future videos. So we see the corpse cart being loaded up with Kislevite dead, and in the background we have their war camp. In the far background we can see jagged rock formations that look very similar to the Northern Wastes maps in the current game. The narrator here is speaking the words of a letter that has already been received by the female figure, who is Tsarina Catherine, the Ice Queen of Kislev. He calls her my child. Now while that is a term sometimes used by those of a priestly persuasion, I'd say it's pretty clear this is coming from her actual father, the Tsar, or former Tsar, Boris the Red. He talks of a sacrifice made that has not been enough, a suicide mission perhaps. There is just the tiniest hint of her tearing up before she pushes that grief aside. It feels like recognition that she'll not see her father again, probably something she suspected, but confirmed by his own hand here. So let's pause for just a second and talk about Boris. When Karl Franz becomes emperor, Boris the Red is the Tsar of Kislev, and Catherine, his daughter, is first in line. In the original lore, Boris is killed in Troll Country in 2517 fighting against the Kurgan. The Kurgan are the Eastern Steppes equivalent of Norska, to keep things relatively simple, and are actually the tribe that spawned the previous ever-chosen Azavar Kul, who led the forces of Chaos in the First Great War, that the soon-to-be-resurrected Warhammer the Old World setting will build towards. Now the letter does not confirm that Boris is dead, and we know Creative Assembly and Games Workshop are tweaking the lore here and there, and the dates to fit the game, so I'll cycle back to him later when we talk about Legendary Lords. The figure that enters the tent we'll also discuss at the end, but is at least dressed very similarly to the robed figure we saw in the teaser trailers with the Celestial Wizard, if not the exact same person. So we get confirmation of the 4 Chaos Gods with those beautifully animated shots. I love the glass breaking at the end. I made the connection there between the ice and the fire, with Khorne being the god most associated with flames being the most classically aligned to our ideas of the devil. Like the glass has been heated and then cools again, causing it to shatter. So she places the ice crown on her head and enchants her sword, which should be Fear Frost from her lore war gear. We also see guarding her tent the Ice Guard that were revealed in the Warhammer community page some time ago. From what we know about these new units in the lore, they are an all-female elite guard similar to the Handmaidens of Avalorn. In-game we can expect them to either be combination melee and ranged with magical damage, and most likely having a bound spell of some variety. I think we can also expect both they and the ice magic spells to impart an effect similar to Frostbite, which we already have in the Total War Warhammer series. As she strides from her tent, she is greeted by what I'm going to guess is a generic general, a noble known as a boyar, who seems to want to indicate that she does not need to take the field in person, and is suitably completely ignored because Catherine is a complete badass. We can see the lightly armoured foot troops known as the Khazars on both sides, and these are also male and female, and these ones appear to be primarily ranged infantry. In the background we have a lightly armoured skirmish cavalry. These may or may not be the Ungol horse archers. They're wrapped up a bit warmly compared to what we had in the model range of the past. Oh boy, here we go, Bear Cavalry. Again, a bit spoiled by the Warhammer community posts a wee while back, but these are another newer addition to the lore, as previously Boris was unique, I believe, in riding a bear. These will be the Demigryph Knights for Kislev. Like the Demigryphs, I wonder if we're seeing 2 variants here. The one in the background clearly holds a classical looking lance hinting at anti-infantry shock cavalry, but is the one slightly closer holding something more similar to a glaive? Could that be an anti-large option? Surely both will have huge charge bonuses, and could the glaive variant be better in sustained combat? And now we have the charge of the winged lancers. We can see they are shielded and have some armour, but nowhere near the levels of Imperial or Bretonnian knights. These guys will be much more similar to Illyrian Reavers, slightly slower with a bit more armour and a higher charge bonus with those lancers. And finally we get the Chaos Forces. Now, one of the arguments being made against the 4 Chaos factions being separated was that Demons of Chaos would have a limited roster. But I always thought we would have both the mortal and demonic forces of each god combined, and this appears to confirm it. These are Skull Crushers of Khorne, Chaos Knights who have proven themselves worthy to ride a Juggernaut of Khorne. Juggernauts appear in both 40k and Fantasy, and are similar in some ways to demon engines in 40k, being a combination of demon and living metal. In Fantasy, they are ridden only by the most devoted of the Chaos God's followers, and are earned by a tithe of skulls by either mortal champions or lesser demon Bloodletters who appear later in the trailer. These things will be heavily armoured monstrous cavalry with decent shock damage and probably pretty hardy in sustained combat. Cycle charging these things wouldn't be very lore friendly, and I'd expect a rage mechanic like Frenzy. Maybe even dialed up to the max, as you would think being marked by Khorne might give many units that type of mechanic. Again, do we have hints at 2 variants in the weapons here? We'll have to see. Glorious melee combat ensues, and we have more heavily armoured infantry for the Kislevites, wielding sword and broad, and later on great weapons. But we're all here for the Bloodletters. The design looks fantastic, as do all the Khornite forces shown. These are the foot variant, but I expect to see them mounted on Juggernauts also. Magical and or flaming attacks look like they could be a thing, along with some form of physical resistance would be my guess. Whatever they have, it looks like it's not going so well for our Kislevites once the hand-to-hand starts. Here Catherine appears to be calling up what we can guess from the previous lore of ice will be Shard Storm, torrent of diamond-hard icicles flung at the foe. And we see the Bloodthirster in all his glory here, armed with a double-headed axe of Khorne and a great whip that's made from the flayed skins of Slaanesh worshippers that scream as the whip cracks. Gotta love that grimdark. Back to our robe figure. He's obviously trusted enough to be left alone in a tent, but like I said, we'll get back to him at the end. This is of course the big Cathay reveal. I'll admit, I had them pegged for a later DLC, so this was a brilliant surprise. But I want to talk about the letter first. We don't get to see the entire contents in any shot, but this is what I've made out from it. Dear Yuri. Now this character is surely inspired by Yuri Kovalenko, who appears in the 2nd edition of Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game. In that lore, he was a horse archer, who got the killing blow on a Chaos champion and looted a blood-red jewel from his grasp. This jewel was corrupted by Chaos and over time gave Yuri his first blessing, mutating his hand into a claw. Now, new Yuri is a little different, but one of my predictions will be very much in his lore background. While my only hope is that this finds you well, I know the hardship and peril into which I have ordered you. Forgive me for sending you far into the north. Okay, so all this is pretty clear. Yuri has been sent by Catherine to the north, to Troll Country perhaps. Duty must come before us, and you are the only one I trust to complete this task. Okay, so first indication that the relationship between the two is a deep one, and you could interpret this as being romantically linked. Duty to the kingdom coming before their own desire to be together if you want to read it that way. The Boyarin dispatches become increasingly erratic. He claims to have heard the roar. So at first I thought this was just saying reports from the nobles are erratic. But the next line confirms she is likely talking about her father, the Tsar Boris the Red. We know from his narrative that he has travelled out on a journey to make what he calls a sacrifice that has not been enough. The roar likely relates to the bear god Ursun, depicted in the constellation of the teaser trailers. In the lore, Boris becomes the High Priest of Ursun, the first to hold that title in 4 centuries. We must act quickly, so you have my complete authority. We must act quickly, so you have my complete authority, while I secure the throne and see to my realm's borders. Confirming Boris has either abdicated to her, or she is regent until his inevitable death. She knows he isn't coming back, and there could be challenges for her right to succession. Yuri, my Ungol prince, you must ride north to the outpost of Devengard. Ungolls are the nomadic horse tribes of more northern Kislev. They are seen as less civilized by the Gospodars of the southern lands from which the ruling Tsars are drawn. A romantic relationship between the two could be scandalous, or at least a poor political choice amongst the boyarines of the south, where she could have been expected to have a political marriage with one of those. Whether or not Yuri is actually a prince, or whether it's just a term of endearment, are probably reasonably mute. I couldn't find anything similar to DeviantArt on the maps I looked at, but he's already gone north, and now he's being instructed to go further north all the way out to an outpost. Depending on how they lay out the final parts of the map, this could be towards Norska, and the map we see is laid out a bit like a globe, so the angles are unusual. En route you will encounter foes both mortal and demon, overcome them and find what is lost. Yours always, Katerin. Okay, so if we were unsure if it's a romantic relationship, I think that sign-off puts it to bed. So young stud version of Yuri is on a fetch quest, maybe for the red gem of old Yuri that smelt of hay and manure. Now I can see this being one of two things, either a mechanic similar to the Sword of Cain, which is my guess, or just a baseline story quest for Katerin. If it's the former, then Yuri could be a legendary lord positioned near Norska with a storyline mission to pick up said item. The player may then have choices, much like a choose-your-own adventure, on how to proceed with the plotline, especially if they have a chaos corruption mechanic involved with holding said item. If it's the latter, then Yuri is more likely to be a hero character you will get if you play as Katerin. Okay, so I may as well make my prediction for the Kislev legendary lords. I think they'll have 2 of the confirmed 9, and it's Katerin with a toss-up between Boris and Yuri for the other. I'm gonna go with Yuri as the one we get. We know where he'll start on the map, and he's possibly quite high up in Ungol society, and while he's in the north where they hail from, he could maybe raise an army there. I think Boris will be a plotline character at first, and who knows, maybe a legendary lord down the track. It's a hard choice, this one, and you could easily get all 3 into the game right off the bat by making Yuri a named hero, so maybe that's the better route. Okay, so the map again and confirmation of Cathay. Cathay has very limited lore references to draw from. The map I think intentionally shows how the realm of Cathay and Kislev will link with the road to the east, called the Path to the East on this map, and the Road of Skulls being so clearly marked. On the original maps, the Road of Skulls under the piece representing Katerin links Kislev at Volksgrad to the northern parts of the Mountains of Morn in the Ogre Kingdoms. This route avoids the main part of Chaos Dwarf territory and would be the most likely route open until they are in the game. The other route of note is the Path to the East. In the original maps this links Sylvania and Karak Kadrin to the eastern steppes and goes straight through the centre of both the Ogre Kingdoms and Chaos Dwarf territory, passing just south of the Tower of Tsar Nagrund, which is their capital city. This route would either have to be moved or just not open until both factions are in the game. For Cathay, we'll have to see what they come up with. Legends of monkey warriors, automated stone statues and serpentine dragons are aplenty. We've been told that the hierarchy of Cathay will surprise people in the Designing of Kislev and Cathay video on the Warhammer YouTube channel. My heart lies in the Old World 2 mark, so I'll keep this short. 2 legendary lords for Cathay, the surprise being neither of them are exactly human. One will be the Jade Emperor, who is really a dragon that takes on human form for the day-to-day stuff, a caster, with a metamorphosis ability to unleash the dragon. The second will be the Monkey King, and he will actually be a Simian Beastman. The Cathay army is going to be one of the most varied we've seen in Total War. Tomb Kings meets Beastmen meets Empire with dragons. Awesome. And finally we get the last shot of the hooded figure, and the cheeky scamp gives us all the sort of devious smirk that screams a double cross. Maybe a little too obvious? I do love the callback to the light wizard who was corrupted in the first Total War Warhammer, and the advisor we all turned off after 5 minutes. Okay, so my chaos prediction is the 4 chaos powers will all get 1 legendary lord, but it's a little trickier here than just picking the most likely named demon. I mean, it could be that, so Kabanda or Skarbrand for Khorne, Nukari or Sivlox for Slanesh, Gurugath of the Endless Rot or Chugath, the Plague Father for Papa Nurgle, and Karios Fateweather or Sven of the Silver Claw for Zeech. But if we're getting exalted greater demons of this type already, could we get mortal characters like Valkyria the Bloody for Khorne, or Vilitich the Curseling for Tzeentch, to go alongside the Sigvalts of this world sliding into the Slaanesh lists? But no, I'm going to go with generic lords for the 4 Chaos Gods, and Chaos Sorcerers for the 3 that aren't Khorne. The only one I'd be least sure of is Tzeentch because they already have Satharel, and getting Vilitich out of the box would be awesome. But I'm gonna go with Khorne gets Kabanda, Nurgle gets Ch'Gath and his Cauldron, and Kari for Slaanesh, but I hope we see the mask soon, and Karios Fate Weaver for Tzeentch, because then at least his model will stand out from the other 2 single-headed warp chickens. So if you're playing along at home, that's 8 of the confirmed 9, so 1 left to go. And it's between Khorne and Nurgle, because Fabulous Siggy and Big Bird gives the other 2 Chaos factions 2 legendary lords already. I'm going for Khorne because Nurgle at least has the generic Chaos Lord Sorcerer option, so Khorne gets Valkyria the Bloody because why not? I was also tempted to say Be'lakor for number 9, but I think he's going to be an unlock from completing the storyline plot, so yes in game, but not one of the 9. In the lore, he's really important to the rise of Archaon and features prominently in the end times. On the Steam page it says, "There is one who schemes to achieve just that, an ancient figure who desires nothing less than to wield supreme power, but to succeed, he'll need a champion." I'm reading that this is a plot event that unlocks him as a playable lord for Chaos Undivided, much like Satharel was. Now the big assumption here is that the 9 does not include a legendary lord present for the pre-order bonus faction. If it did, and the wording hints that the 9 are for the confirmed races, then Valkyria will get benched to DLC and this faction gets number 9. So who do I think the pre-order bonus faction will be? Everybody wants it to be ogres, I'd love it to be ogres, and the way the map could fit and the ancient giant lands being a label throws that out there. But I'm a cynical bastard that thinks that Creative Assembly wants to have 2 major races for future DLC, and they're going to hold back the Chaos Dwarfs and the Ogres. These 2 would get the most interest and the biggest sales. I want to be wrong, but maybe the letter being pushed to cover over the Ogre Kingdoms is because they're not in straight away. What is revealed is the city of Sangjiang, apologies for the pronunciation, westernmost of the Cathayan fortress towns on the Silk Road, and home to a large mercantile quarter. How about our pre-order being Telia and the Dogs of War? That's big enough not to feel it was a bit of a rip-off like other options like Norscan Dwarves might do, but would they sell a DLC on their own in the same way that Ogres and Chaos Dwarfs can? Corporate Commander says no, so I'm having Telia Dogs of War as the pre-order bonus with a legendary lord starting either in Cathay or on another island outpost in the area, similar to Teclis being away from Ulthuan in Total War Warhammer 2. Other options could be the aforementioned Norscan Dwarves, Nippon or Albion if we wanted a bit more balance between the forces likely to align with Order against the Chaos Invasion. All 3 would have the advantage of completing northern sections of the map. If balance between good and evil be damned, then the Kurgan, or another of the barbarian tribes of the northern wastes, could be fleshed out. But how different from Norsca would that feel? Okay, so for my predictions we have Kislev with Katarina and Yuri, Cathay with the Monkey King and the Dragon Emperor, Khorne with Kabanda and Valkyria, Nurgle with Ch'Gath, Slaanesh gets Kari, Tzeentch gets Kerios, with the pre-order bonus being Telia and the Dogs of War. The 3 main DLCs will be Ogres, then Chaos Dwarfs, and finally the rise of Nagash, with Thancor popping up at some time too. For a tiebreaker, I'm going for a release date in October, the 1st, because why not? I'll put these in the comments if you want to play along too, so copy and paste that comment with your own picks and whoever gets the most guesses right gets a prize picked out from my pile of shame, lovingly painted to a tabletop standard using at least 10 different paints. I won't even say you have to be subbed, but it would be lovely if you were. And if you don't win, we can laugh at how wrong we were when we hopped on this hype train. My plans and ambitions for Total War Warhammer 3 is to properly get into the multiplayer scene this time round, having only really dipped my toes on that side during the first 2 games. I'm going to be in multiplayer noobing it up over the next year to get ready. I'm going to have lots of content from the game on this channel, both gameplay and lore. Maybe some of my noob adventures in multiplayer alongside a campaign or two if folk are keen for that. With Darktide and Blood Bowl this year, it's going to be a big one for gaming in the Warhammer universes, and I can't wait. Thank you for watching, and look forward to seeing your guesses down below. And I'll see you again in the near future, where there is only war.